Hey guys, just want to start today's lesson in my basement here. I never thought I'd be teaching from my basement where I tend to hang out and do nerdy stuff. But today we're going to talk about topic 7.6. I gave you a big paper handout if you want to follow along, but I'll be doing some puzzle questions for you on this video. 7.6 is evidence of evolution. We did already lecture on this, but I just wanted to start with a quick review on it. All right, the first evidence we have are fossils, which you probably remember. How do we figure out how old fossils are? We can use superposition. That means the oldest layers on the bottom and the youngest layers on the top. Or we can use the carbon or radioactive dating, where we look at the decay of isotopes. So when we look at these, we can see that more evolved animals, more complex animals tend to be more recent, and the farther back we go in the fossil record, we can kind of see a history of life evolving from less complex to more complex. Another thing we can do when we look at these fossils is basically compare the location that they are found. And when we look at things like Pangea splitting up, we can see that a species that was once sharing the same geographical region will evolve differently after we see these geologic changes, whether it be a continent breakup, a mountain range appearing. And even in modern times, things as simple as the Panama Canal have been used to research this. Before the Panama Canal, there were species of shrimp that were really different on the two sides of the canal. And after the canal opened up, these things were able to kind of intermix. So even things like that have been used to study biogeography. So we have geography and we have fossils, but we also have this morphological difference, and that just means shape. And we're going to look at how homologies, okay, and how these same structures throughout all these creatures here in my picture. You can see we've got some arms, different types of legs, and there's a bat wing that's not quite shown up there on the right. This is stuff we've looked at in class, so this is not new, but these bones have the same sort of basic structure. Everything has a humerus, everything has a radius and ulna, everything has carpals, and everything has these finger bones. They're just rearranged in different forms. So this kind of shows that, like, we started with a similar body plan, a common ancestor, and the pressures of the environment caused these structures to do different jobs. So we're not coming up with totally new structures here. Evolution is using what's available to it to make different structures to get different jobs done. And again, this is called a homologous structure. All right, the next topic is convergent evolution we've talked about. And a lot of times we think about this as structures like butterfly wings and bat wings, but here's a really interesting one, and it's echolocation. So both these animals use echolocation, and the environmental pressures on them don't really seem similar until we take a closer look. We've got bats that are hunting at night when insects are really active, and they need to see without light. And whales have the same problem. They have limited access to light. So both these creatures, incredibly different environments, incredibly different body plans, but solving the problem with the same sort of adaptation. So this is an example of convergent evolution. All right, just continuing convergent evolution a little more. The big sort of point on convergent evolution is that the trait did not come from a common ancestor. Look over on the right. You've got four different creatures here. You've got these swimming sort of reptile dinosaurs that are extinct. That's the brown guy at the top there. Everybody knows what sharks and dolphins and penguins look like. They all have this really teardrop-shaped body plan that allows them to be hydrodynamic. That just means to slip through the water without a lot of resistance. And that's another example of convergent evolution. And in this case, the adaptation is living in an aquatic environment, okay? So we have all these things that move through the water very efficiently, don't have the same ancestor, but all of them have this very sleek teardrop shape that that they evolved independently from completely different ancestors. Reptile, fish, mammal, and bird, those are about as far apart as you can get. All right, so those are the big, easy to see ones. Let's stop and take a look at some of the more modern ones. The modern ones are going to be based on biochemistry. So let's look at how we're looking at different DNA sequences and protein sequences are going to allow us to have evidence for evolution. All right, this one sounds a little scary because it's got the word chemistry in it, but it's pretty basic. And all it shows is that if we sequence the DNA of two species, the more similarities there are in those DNA sequences, the more closely they are related. And an example of that is humans and chimpanzees are about 97% the same. So a lot of the proteins between us and mammals are going to be very similar. A lot of the proteins between us and even things like birds and reptiles are going to be similar. But you start moving down to things like plants, proteins that do the same sorts of jobs are going to have much more difference than human proteins. And some of those proteins, in fact, aren't even made at all. Plants don't have cartilage or hemoglobin, but almost all animals have hemoglobin. And as we look at the differences between those proteins, species that are much more similar and closer together in evolution are going to have proteins that are really close to each other. And it just follows that the DNA is going to do that too, because the DNA codes for the protein. So it's not like these are two different things when we really look at it. But proteins that do the same job are very closely related in species that are evolutionarily close. So this is really all I want you to get done today. Just answer these Ed Puzzle questions about the things I'm talking about for you. Look over these online safety things. Let's not have anybody like shirtless in any kind of chats or any videos we're sending in, or really watch what's in the background. We don't want to see everything about your life. Just really watch the online etiquette. And one other thing I just want to remind you is try not to email me assignments or post them in discussion boards. There are ways to submit assignments within each Schoology assignment. That little textbook thing I sent you was to kind of train you on how to do that. Some of you haven't done that yet. Let's get out there and send a picture of that textbook in. All right, guys, that pretty much covers Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow with Thursday's lesson.